Hello and welcome to Think Outside the Board. This is the Kickstarter Weekly, a video series in which I look at crowdfunding campaigns that are completing their funding in the following week. Hand-selected campaigns that I think are the best of the best out there. Campaigns that you probably don't want to miss. So maybe you want a reminder about these in case you haven't taken a look at them yet or pulled the trigger on funding. Now, also in these videos, I talk about games that I've played since the previous video. There are 5 of those this week. There are 8 campaigns we're going to be looking at. I have 1 game that I personally backed from last week's video. I'll be talking about that in the 3rd section. And then in the final section, I'll be talking about the 3 games that I've acquired into my collection since the last video. As always, my videos are bookmarked, tabbed, so you can just mouse over the bar there. And if there is a particular game you're interested in hearing about or a campaign that you want to focus on, you can just go right to that section. Also, if you go down into the description of the video down below, I have links to all of the campaigns that I'm talking about. So if any of the 8 campaigns, the ones that are funding this week, once we get to those, are of particular interest to you and you want to go over and check them out, you don't need to go hunting. You can just drop down into the description, click on the link, and it'll take you right there. Now, I'm currently working on finishing up a studio space upstairs. Once I do, I'm going to be putting out teach and review videos again with better equipment, better lighting. I probably will be launching with 1 to 2 of those a week, maybe ramping up to 2 to 3 a week. We'll see how everything goes. It looks like these videos will have less content in December. There'll be less campaigns funding. That'll be good. It'll allow me to finish up that space. Also, around the end of the year, beginning of the next year, I'm planning on launching a Twitch channel and live streaming some games, and I'll also be launching a Patreon. Until then, the best way to support the channel is simply to like and subscribe. You can go ahead and do that now if you haven't yet. And also to leave comments below. And the best thing I think to leave comments about right now are the games that I've personally backed, because those are going to be coming into my collection eventually, and the games that are newly acquired, so the games in the last 2 sections. So if any of those games are games that particularly interest you, let me know in the comments, and I'll know that those are games that I should be focusing on and bumping up those titles in my queue for the teach and review production line. If it's your first time here, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Let's get started on the 5 games that I've played since the last video. The first game that I'd like to talk about today is Gaia Project. This is a multiplayer Euro game. It is the sequel to Terra Mystica. It's a little bit more open in terms of what you can do. It's also themed around space, so that kind of makes sense. It's not so landlocked in terms of the territories that you're going to be building on because you're in space. There are also a few more resources in the game just to give it a little extra crunch. And I often play with a space engineer, and he's really good at the game. He's almost a computer with this game. And usually it's several months in between our plays. So by the time we get back to it, I'm not quite that fresh with the game. I don't play as well, and I always get slaughtered. So I figured it is time for me to start experimenting with the solo mode for Gaia Project, get a little more experience with the factions, see how they work firsthand. This is a game where you not only want to know your faction, but you want to have an idea of how the other factions that you're playing against play. It helps with strategy. It helps to know what they might be doing next. And so I played a couple games. I started out with the recommended game, the recommended faction. I actually won that game, I think. And then I played the faction that's on the flip side. The player boards all come in different colors, and they have 2 different factions, 1 on each side. So after my first game, I decided I would play the faction on the back side, and that has an interesting variable player power in it, where you, normally in the game, you're kind of creating groups of buildings, and they become federations. They give you additional bonuses when you create these federations. This particular faction allows you to just link all of them together. So you don't have to build separate factions. You can just build one big thing, and then as you add on a certain value in points of the buildings, you level up and you get to add another federation onto what you already have. And I think I had my highest scoring game ever with that faction. They're just very geared to do great things. I'm really enjoying Gaia Project solo, and I think this will be a good game for me to continue playing solo with, and the more I do, the more I experience each faction. It's my plan here to play at least once with every faction in the solo mode. As I do that, I know I'm going to have a much better grasp on the game. both in terms of how those different factions work, but also little questions are coming up for me as I'm playing. And so I'm able to answer those little questions for myself. That way, when I go to play multiplayer again, I won't have these kind of little threads of questions about little tiny aspects of the game just sort of hanging out there. I'll know exactly what I'm doing in every little aspect. It's a very deep game with lots of moving parts, so I'm finding it very helpful to get all of these little questions answered. And I think the next time that we do play, I'm going to feel more confident and just have a lot more fun playing, rather than feeling that I'm sort of painted into a corner almost from the start of the game. Now, I've played Terra Mystica a lot in the past. I played that online at Board Game Arena. Gaia Project is actually on there now, so I could play that there as well. Maybe eventually I will, but I have a lot more experience in Terra Mystica, and I feel much more confident with that game's mechanics and that game's factions. So I can already tell that from my 2 solo games, things are gearing up, and I'm becoming more confident, and I'm hoping to play through the remaining factions, there's a lot of them, and really just get my feet soaking wet. So I'm much more skilled at the game as I play it more in multiplayer mode. I didn't mention this at the top of this section, but the new way that I'm going to be approaching this section is that when I'm talking about games, I'm not going to repeat myself. So if you're interested in a game that I'm talking about and I'm not talking about it in great depth, it probably means that I've talked about it in recent weeks, and you may want to go back, check out some of those other videos, because at some point I probably go into many more details about how the game plays. But I played the solo mode of Gaia Project twice. It's remaining a really solid game for me. I'm going to give it a 9.0 right now, which I think is consistent with what I've said in the past. I could see it going up the more I play the solo mode and the more I get familiar with the various factions, and I'll come back to it and adjust the score if I feel like that's something that I should do. And I think I probably will, but I'm going to actually play those factions before I raise the score. So for now, Gaia Project comes in again with a 9.0. I played Lost Ruins of Arnak a bunch of times. I was doing an online tournament, so I played 11 games since the last video, and I've learned a lot of things about Lost Ruins of Arnak, sort of what the best moves are from the very beginning of the game. For instance, I know if you get 2 fear cards, you're not going to be able to go for one of the idols kind of in the middle of the board probably. I have a better idea of what the whole first round is going to look like based on your starting cards. And you can do really well in Lost Ruins of Arnak when you're going after a lot of monsters, and I've done that somewhat in the past. But after playing all these games, I now realize that the tracks along the side really are what you need to prioritize, no matter your playstyle. You can go for a lot of monsters as well, but you don't want to deprioritize the track with the spyglass and the book. And I'd seen people, actually had played against a friend a few weeks ago, and I think it was the first time I ever saw someone get the spyglass and the book both all the way up to the top of the tracks. Now in my games, I did that I think 3 different times at least, in all those games. And it's definitely, I think if you do that, if you're there first and you ascend those tracks, you're almost always going to win the game. You do want to bulk up with as many monsters as you can, but you really want to prioritize those tracks. The other thing I'd like to pass on to you in terms of tips for playing is when you go into an area with a monster for the very first time, and you take one of the little idle tokens, you put it on your player board, you can later, as a free action, move that idle token up to take a space. If you do that, you're going to be covering up some endgame points. You'll lose those, but you'll get some resources. Now, the first one that you cover up isn't a big deal. You're only losing 1 point, but they increase, and there's 4 slots. So by the time you get to the last one, you're going to have 3 points for that token anyway, but you also get 4 points for the slot. So you've got 7 points. But the moment you move that token up and cover up that 4-point slot, you're no longer getting those 4 points. You're going from 7 points to 3 points. So you do want to try to not move those tokens up as much as you can. The bigger thing, though, the thing I'd like to pass on to you is when you do this, when you're getting these tokens, I witnessed some players go really hard for these tokens. And in the top section of the board, the part where you need 6 compasses to play in, which is a lot. You can't do that in the beginning part of the game. You need to accumulate compasses and sometimes engines to get you compasses. But once you have a lot of compasses, you can go up to the top, and if you go into one of those locations, you're going to get 2 of these idle tokens. And I saw some players doing that and just ignoring the monsters altogether. And I never really seen people before ignoring the monsters so purposefully. What happens when you go to a location is that you're going to get some rewards for that location, and then a monster tile is going to come out. And you need to pay extra resources. You don't know what they are until the monster comes out, but extra random resources to defeat that monster. If you defeat that monster in that round, you will get the monster tile. It usually has an additional bonus on it. You'll be able to trigger it any time in the game, and it's worth 5 points at the end of the game. So when I've played, I've always tried to get those monster tiles, 5 points plus an ability. Here's the thing though, if you're going especially to that top section where you're getting 2 idle tokens, that's 6 points right there. And you're going to get the resources that come out with the location. So when you then have to pay resources to defeat the monster, sometimes that can really gum up your game, because that's going to be other resources that you need for other things, for going up the track, which you really want to prioritize. If you can defeat the monster, it's a great thing. You'll get the 5 points, you'll get an additional ability that you can use later in the game. But what I've learned now from seeing other people do this is that especially when you push to that top section where you get 2 of those idols, it's okay to leave the monster behind. If you leave the monster behind, you're not going to get 5 points for the tile, and you're going to take a fear card, which kind of jams up your deck a little bit. It's not a very good card. There are ways to exile it out of the game, but you're going to have to take it initially. If you're left with it at the end of the game, it'll give you a negative 1 point. So you're potentially losing 6 points by not killing the monster. But sometimes it is so prohibitive to put together the resources that you need to kill the monster, and those resources are better spent other places. Now, I think when you're going into the middle part of the board, where you're only going to get 1 tablet for going there, and it only costs 3 compasses to go there, it's much more important to kill the monster, I think. And usually you have resources to do that. But sometimes that push to get up to the top of the board costs a lot of resources. You have to do a lot of things to get there, and you're not left with much else. So you may need what you're left with to go up that track on the side of the board. And I think in those cases, don't worry about the monster so much. If you can swing it, if you can kill the monster, do it. But if you're going to drive yourself crazy and use up any remaining resources to try to get the monster, sometimes not even then, sometimes it's okay to leave that monster. Sometimes you can come back for it later and kill it on a later turn. But it's not the most efficient thing to leave a monster, but I think considering that you get 2 tablets for going there and the resources, sometimes you don't want to pay extra things to then kill the monster. And I'm realizing now that that's a really good strategy, because I saw players getting not just 4 tablets, the ones that you can slide up into the slots to get extra resources for during the game. I see players finish with 8 or 9 tablets. And while you can get a lot of points for monsters, I think on a really good game, some players get 4 or 5, 6 monsters. They're each with 5 points. If you end the game with like 7 of these tablets, that's 21 points. And if you haven't covered all of the slots, you're going to get more points there as well. And it's easier to get those tablets than to kill the monsters. Usually you have to get the tablets first and then kill the monsters. So, pro tip, I guess, for anyone out there, first of all, prioritize the track with the spyglass and the book, and then just try to get a lot of tablets. That's probably even more important than getting monsters. You do want to keep pace with the other players in terms of the number of monsters that they're defeating, but you don't need to outrun them too much. You can really let the work that goes to win the game be done by the track, and then supplemented by the tablets. So that's what I've learned after playing Lost Ruins of Arnak a lot over the last week. Now, I also played Lost Ruins of Arnak with the Expedition Leaders expansion. There's a new expansion coming out, a second expansion on the horizon, and a friend of mine and I decided we really need to get the first expansion played first. And this gives you variable player powers. So when you play it with this expansion, everyone plays a different character, and those characters all work differently. My friend played with the Falconer character, so they kind of move a little falcon around, and then if it gets to a certain point, they can sometimes use it as a free action, or sometimes use it as a main action, but a very powerful main action. And each time you do that, the falcon then returns to you, and you can start them moving out again. The falcon will move 1 slot at the end of every round. It'll also move 1 slot for 2 cards that are in your starting deck. So whenever you're triggering those cards, the falcon will move as well. she really maximized what she was doing in her game, and she slaughtered me. And I think part of it was she got that spyglass right up to the top, the book followed, and as I said before, when you do that, it's a huge advantage. And so she kind of got her engine working really well for how the Falconer plays and did a good job. Now, I was playing a character called the Professor, and he gets some private artifacts that he can buy when he wants to. He also gets additional compasses, some additional scrolls in the game, and every character has their own starting deck that's a little different than the normal starting deck, with a couple cards that are specific to them. Because the Professor is very geared towards artifacts, I went very heavy into artifacts and acquiring more artifacts. The only problem with that is when you first get an artifact, you get to use it sort of for free. And then when it comes through your deck again, you need to pay a scroll to use it. That can be very expensive. Scrolls can be hard to get. I did a pretty good job, I think, of acquiring lots of scrolls, of building an engine to get me lots of scrolls, and just doing a lot with artifacts. But in hindsight, I realized that I leaned into it really heavily, and I said, let's try to see how far I can make the points from card collection goes. I'm going to get as many cards, both the coin cards and the artifacts, as possible. And I did an amazing job. I had a huge deck at the end of the game. Nevertheless, it still wasn't enough to get me anywhere near winning. And I think that just reinforces what I was saying earlier when I was talking about the base game. You really need to prioritize those tracks. So it was my experiment into exploring the deck building aspect and how many points you can get from cards. And what I learned is that is not a winning strategy. I think if you're playing the Professor, you can certainly pick up a bunch of cards and that will supplement your score, but you still need to make sure that you do not neglect the tracks that run up the side of the board. So in general, that's what I want to pass on to you if you've only played Arnak a few times. That, I think, always needs to be your main focus, is ascending those tracks. Now, in the past, I've rated Lost Ruins of Arnak an 8.5. I'm going to continue with that score. And I haven't played the expansion enough to really give it a rating on its own, so I'm going to put that rating at an 8.5 as well. I need to either play myself or see other people play all the various characters, I think, just to see where I land in terms of the score. But I really like it, and I think it brings a whole new element to the game. It gives it even more crunch, and it changes things up. So I think if you're playing Lost Ruins of Arnak a lot, like I have been lately, you may start to get a little tired of it. It's a really good game in terms of not getting too samey. There's so much strategy in the game, so many things that you can do, but as I keep saying, you do need to prioritize those tracks. There's a flip side of the board, a temple track, and same thing though. I mean, it's different. There's different resources on it. It operates a little bit differently, but you still do need to prioritize those tracks. The expansion gives you 2 new tracks, so you can lay them over either side of the board, and that'll change up the game. But the player powers that you're working with and the additional mechanics that they add into the game really breathes new life into the game, gives you a new set of puzzles to work with. And so I think if you're someone who loves the game, but you've been playing it so much, it's getting a little old for you, a little stale in some ways, you're going to love this expansion, and it's going to be Lost Ruins of Arnak all over again. So for me, I'm going to say that Expedition Leaders is also an 8.5. I'm enjoying it as much as I'm enjoying the base game. I think over time, my score could go up. Possibly, maybe to a 9.0. That's probably likely. And it will also be interesting to see this second expansion that's coming out and how that works and plays with both the base game and the first expansion. But I think Lost Ruins of Arnak is a great game overall. It's a deck builder, it's a worker placement game. It came out the same year as Dune Imperium, but they do things differently. People kind of compared them a lot because they were both deck builders and worker placement games, but they play very, very differently. And Lost Ruins of Arnak is really a puzzle. You play in 5 rounds. Every round you're going to get 5 cards, and then it's what you do with those cards. There's ways that you can keep getting new cards into your hand. There's just a whole bunch of strategies that you can employ depending on what cards you get during the game and sort of how you build up your engine or your deck, I guess. And there's a lot going on in Arnak, but it's also not really difficult to teach because the central concepts are fairly clear. So the crunch comes from what you're doing, the decisions that you're making, not the game itself being overwhelmingly complex. So I think gamers of all kind of levels, maybe not really beginning gamers, but medium, I don't want to say medium light, somewhere medium to medium heavy and beyond, maybe even the heavier end of medium light, are really going to get into this game and love it. And it's also very thematic. It's a wonderful game across the board. So 8.5 for Lost Ruins of Arnak and 8.5 for Expedition Leaders, with that one likely going up over time. I also played Tapestry again. I've played this in the past few weeks. I don't have anything new to say. I'm just, at this point, trying different strategies. There are 4 different tracks around the board. You go up them based on choices that you make. And usually when you play, you want to focus on 1, maybe 2 tracks. So I'm just trying to run into a room with levers, pull all the levers, and see what they all do. So I'm experimenting with the different tracks and kind of what works best. I do think, though, that in the early part of the game, you want to explore all of the tracks a little bit, get yourself going. You definitely want to go on the science track at least once to get a tech card. I made the mistake of not doing that in one of my games, and there's a point when you're kind of in between rounds doing your income phase where you get to advance a tech card. So if you don't have any tech cards, you're going to lose some points. You're going to lose something by not having the ability to upgrade that. And I made the mistake one time of really focusing on the exploration track and the military track, and I didn't go to science at all. That, I think, was a mistake. But I'm just playing around with different strategies and kind of seeing how it all shakes out. Sometimes, you go in, you want to do one thing, and based on what the other players do and the way the game goes, you kind of have to change tactics. So not every game is kind of following the path that I am going into it, hoping that it will follow, but I'm trying to flow with it. And I think there's a huge, I don't want to say luck necessarily, but probability factor, because the strength of what you can do to some degree can be based on the cards that you get, both these tech cards and tapestry cards. Tapestry cards are cards that come out and you activate them once at the end of every round, and they'll kind of be there for the next round. You play, I think, 3 of them over the course of the game. And some of the tapestry cards are really amazing, and some of them are not. There are ways in the game to get more tapestry cards, so if you don't like the cards that you have, you can try to get more, but that can end up taking some attention and some focus and some resources to get those cards in. So if you just have great cards fall in your lap, you are definitely going to have an advantage. I picked up the expansion Plans and Ploys recently, and I'd like to see how that works with the game and if it balances out some of the luck or probability problems that I find in the game. I still really enjoy Tapestry, and it's a very tactile game. It's a lot of fun to play, but it's not a perfect game in terms of every player kind of being in the same situation and having the same opportunities. I do find that when I'm playing it, some players, just through what happens randomly in the game, get a leg up over other players. So it's something to be aware of if you're going into this game. I think if you want to play a really tight strategy game where everybody is on the same level, you might be a little frustrated with Tapestry, but it is a very inherently fun game to play, and I'll report back to you if Plans and Ploys and then later the second expansion, if they help to balance out the game at all. Tapestry right now is going to come in for me at a 7.5. I think I might actually be increasing my score a little bit from past videos. I think I had rated Tapestry as 7.0, but it is with the one caveat that you have to expect that there could be things happening in your game that either give you a leg up or work against you kind of unfairly. However, the game's just so inherently fun, and it's got this tactile element to all the little buildings that you're placing out, both these little tiny sculpted income buildings that you'll be putting on a player mat, and then some larger sculpted buildings that you can earn as you ascend up the various tracks, and sometimes with certain tech cards. It's just super fun to play. It looks great on the table, a lot of table presence. It's not a civilization game, even though it calls itself a civilization game. But it's fun to go up these tracks and kind of play around with them and like I said, pull the levers in the room and see what they do. So 7.5 for me for Tapestry. The last game that I played was Wingspan Asia. I got the nesting box preloaded with Wingspan Asia, and a friend of mine and I played Duet mode, which is not a cooperative version. It's still a competitive version of Wingspan, but it's specifically for 2 players. So how this works is you're going to have 15 tokens. You put them on all the bird slots on your player mats. And then every time you play a bird slot, you're going to take the token there, and then you're going to place that token out onto a central map. where players are competing with tokens they're placing. And you need to place it on the same area where you played your bird. So maybe the water, the forest, the marshy area, the one with a little yellow diamond. You're going to need to choose a spot in one of those three areas. And there are different icons. You'll also need to kind of match up to one of the icons that was either like a food token that you used that round or the type of bird that you played. And there's even a couple weird things like which way the bird's head is facing. So that will allow you to get some points at the end of the round because you'll be using new round scoring tokens that are based on this player map rather than the normal ones in the game. And then at the end of the game, whoever has the most contiguous tokens, so if you've kind of connected all of your tokens, you're going to take your biggest group there and you'll score that many points. And the person that I was playing with managed to connect them all, and she got a lot of points at the end of the game, like 12 points or something, and she handily won. But I'm finding that this gives you a little extra crunch in Wingspan and another mechanic to play with and focus on. And I think if you're largely playing two-player Wingspan games, this is definitely the way to go. It's going to open up the game a little bit and give you something else to do. And I think sometimes in a two-player Wingspan, you're boxed in a little bit. There's almost so much that you can do. You don't have as much interactivity as you do in a 3 or 4 player game where some of the bird powers are going to be affecting the other players. It's just you and one other player, and it's just two people competing for the same cards and the same food. It can be a little less compelling, but this additional mechanic with this player mat and the scoring tiles that play off of it really, I think, give a new depth of play to a two-player game. So I would really recommend this to anyone who likes Wingspan in general and to players who play largely two-player Wingspan games. I think I rated Wingspan an 8.0 recently, but that was for two-player games, not in duet mode. I think maybe if I've been playing Wingspan at higher player counts, I might be rating Wingspan a little bit higher, maybe an 8.5 or a 9. I like duet mode a lot. So I'm going to give Wingspan duet mode an 8.5. I think it bumps up a little bit beyond just a two-player game because I think the two-player game does suffer a little bit. I think Wingspan plays better with a 3 and a 4-player count. And this game just makes some adjustments for that. It gives you a compelling mechanic. It kind of cuts off some of the chaff in a normal two-player Wingspan game. Some of the things about it that just don't work as well with the lower player count. It gives you other stuff. So for me, for now, Wingspan Duet is going to be an 8.5, and as I play it more, we'll see if that score goes up even more. It might. It's a really good two-player experience. And for me, I think my short list right now for two-player games is Caper Europe, Curious Cargo, and Wingspan Duet Mode. All three of those I would actually put above Patchwork, which I know is a two-player game that a lot of people love, and I love it too. It might be coming in 4 for me, but these other 3 are definitely my top 3 two-player games right now. Okay, let's move forward and talk about the 8 campaigns that I'd like to bring your attention to that are completing their funding between November the 28th and December 4th. The first of these is a game called Oceans: Legends of the Deep. They had a minimum required funding goal of $25,000. They're currently at $306,000, which is about 12 times that minimum required funding goal. Oceans: Legends of the Deep is going to complete its funding on Tuesday, November the 29th. This is a game for 2 to 4 players that plays in about 60 to 90 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium low. Now, this is sort of a spin-off of a game called Evolution and Evolution Climate, and it focuses on the ocean, creatures in the ocean. You're going to be building up this engine with these creatures. It's largely a hand management game. In the first half of the game, you're giving these creatures traits, and then in the second half of the game, you're going to be applying various power cards to them to give them powers. Now, the new expansion, that's what this is, Legends of the Deep, is going to add on these very powerful cards with variable abilities. So it's going to kind of tweak your engine, make it even more variable, and give you some fun things to play with that make your creatures even more different and give them kind of outlier type abilities. It's designed by Dominic Crapuchet, who worked on Evolution Climate, the original Oceans base game, and Wits and Wagers. And the art is by Guillaume Ducos, who's worked on Edge of Darkness, Oceans, and Sifka, as well as Tamaz Jedrzejek, who's worked on Dominion, Dominion Intrigue, A Game of Thrones, the board game 2nd edition, Magic the Gathering, and Tyrants of the Underdark. And it's being published by North Star Game Studio, who's put out such titles as Evolution, Evolution Climate, Oceans, The Quacks of Quedlinburg, and The Taverns of Tiefenthal. For $16, you can pledge Oceans Solo Expansion. That's just going to give you a solo expansion that you can use with Oceans. If you pledge $21, you can get the new Legend of the Deep expansion. That's going to give you these really powerful Legends cards that will make your ocean creatures even more powerful and expand the game in new directions. For $45, you can pledge the Oceans Legendary Edition Upgrade Kit. That's going to give you both of these new expansions, a legendary box to fit everything in, a game trays insert, and some Legends of the Deep promos. But this is going to be something that you want to get if you already have the base game and you're just looking to get everything new, including a new box to keep it all in. For $85, you can pledge Oceans Legendary Edition. That's going to give you everything from that previous pledge level, and it's also going to add in Oceans Deluxe Editions. So you'll be getting the deluxe version of the base game along with everything else. That's basically your all-in for people who don't have anything Oceans and want it all. Shipping in the continental US is estimated at $6, $6, $10, and $12. So $6 if you're just getting one of the two new expansions, either the solo expansion or Legends of the Deep. $10 if you're getting all of the new stuff without the base game, or $12 if you're getting the big all-in that includes the base game. Finally, North Star Game Studio is going to deliver Oceans Legends of the Deep in August of 2023. Next on the list is On the Underground, Paris and New York. This had a minimum required funding goal of $12,000. They're currently at $60,000, which is about 5 times that minimum required funding goal. On the Underground is also going to complete its funding on Tuesday, November the 29th. This is a game for 2 to 5 players that plays in about 45 to 60 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium high. Now, this is a train game, and there are a lot of them out there, so the primary mechanic here is going to be network and route building. But what differentiates this one from other train games is that there's one passenger that all players are going to be focusing on. So players are going to, on their turn, be trying to move this passenger around and use their train networks as much as possible to move the passenger, and they'll score points the more that they can do that. So they're building up various train networks, or in this case, subway lines, and then the competition here is in how you move that passenger around to use those lines. Also, this is the third iteration of On the Underground. So the game was originally released with one map, then they added a map and sort of re-released the game On the Underground London Berlin, and now they're coming out with this game, which is 2 new maps, but it is standalone. You can play it on its own. You don't need the previous version to play this one. It's designed by Sebastian Bleasdale, who's worked on Blackfeet, Keyflower, and the original On the Underground. It has art from Victor Seat, who's worked on Crisis, The Manhattan Project, and Twilight Struggle. And it's being published by Ludicreations, who have published Crisis, Enchanters, and On the Underground London Berlin. For $49, you can pledge this new edition. It's called On the Underground Paris, New York. For $59, you can pledge the On the Underground Paris and New York Deluxe Edition. That's going to come with some additional upgraded components. You're going to get silk-screened, custom-shaped destination tokens, custom-shaped passenger tokens, a solo expansion that you can use with both the Paris and Berlin maps, so one of the maps in this version and one of the maps in the previous version, a deluxe slipcase, and a limited edition transparent passenger token. So that little passenger token, the guy that you're moving around, that you're all competing to move around, is going to look a little extra blinged out if you get that version. If you pledge $108 on the Underground Deluxe Bundle, you'll get all of those things, plus you will get the previous version of the game, the one with the London and Berlin maps. So you'll get everything. In the continental US, shipping has been estimated at $9, $9, and $14. So either you're getting the base game or the deluxe with $9 shipping, for either one, or if you're getting the big all-in, $14 in estimated shipping. And finally, Luda Creations is planning on delivering on the Underground, Paris, New York in December of 2023. Next on the list is Castles of Mad King Ludwig Renovations. This one had a very small minimum funding goal of $5,000. They're currently at $214,000, which is the biggest multiplier of the week if we don't include the last campaign on the list, who had a $1 minimum funding goal, which I think is cheating a little bit. So if we don't count that one, then Castles of Mad King Ludwig has the highest multiplier of the week with a 43-time multiplier. This campaign is going to complete its funding on Wednesday, November the 30th. This is a game for 1 to 5 players that plays in about 60 to 90 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at low. Now, this is, in its essence, a tile placement game. Each player is creating their own castle, and they're bidding for different rooms that they're going to place. All of the rooms have different scoring abilities, situations, so you're kind of creating this engine that is your castle, that is these rooms, and the more you place tiles in, the more what you've placed will affect what and how you want to place tiles in the future. It's really cool, with each player building up their own kind of castle map over the course of the game. And I think this is another game that can really be enjoyed by heavier gamers, because there are decisions that you're making that have some strategy behind them and some agency. But the game is not super complicated on its face, so it's a game that lighter gamers can really enjoy as well. I think it's an ideal game, the kind of game that can bring everyone together, which is ideally what board gaming should be doing. It's designed by Ted Alspach, who designed the original base game, Castles of Mad King Ludwig, as well as One Night Ultimate Werewolf, One Night Ultimate Werewolf Daybreak, Suburbia, and Werewords. And the art here is by Agnieszka Dabrowska, who's worked on Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig, the original Castles of Mad King Ludwig, and the Castles of Mad King Ludwig Collector's Edition. Now, the publisher is Ted Alspach's company. It's called Bezier Games. They have published Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig, Castles of Mad King Ludwig, One Night Ultimate Werewolf, One Night Ultimate Werewolf Daybreak, and Suburbia. The pledge breakout is fairly simple. For $30, you can pledge Renovations. That's this new expansion. This allows you to take some tiles and kind of overlay other tiles that you've already built. So as you're playing the game, you're building up your engine, there may be things that you kind of want to change. You'll be able to use this expansion and sort of overwrite certain rooms, maybe to make some adjustments so that you can score better at the end of the game. Now, the last crowdfunding campaign that they did a colossal version with bigger tiles. So if you pledge that one and you want to get bigger tiles for this one, you're going to want to pledge the second pledge level. It's for $60. It's called Renovations and Colossal Renovations. It's going to give you some components that you'll use with either version, and then it will give you both versions of the tiles. So you'll kind of get everything together, both sizes of tiles, and the components that you would need when playing with either version. Finally, for $110, you can pledge Castles 2nd Edition and Castles Expansions. That is the all-in. It will get you the base game, the nice Kickstarter version of the base game. Now, unfortunately, there are no shipping estimates provided in this campaign. I think if you pledge games, at least semi-regularly, and you've been aware of the pandemic of the last couple years, you know that the supply chains have just gotten insane and shipping costs have skyrocketed, and it's led to a situation where people don't always know what the situation will be a year out. And companies are doing their best to make estimates, but there's even more guesswork involved than usual. So Bezier Games just decided to not do that. They're having a little faith that backers will have some faith in them and understand they're not trying to screw them over by not having estimates, and they will give them the best shipping prices that they can get when this thing delivers in a year, but they're not going to give you an estimate that they feel, could go anywhere. I think that's a little unfortunate. I like to have estimates, even if they have to change as the world changes. It's at least nice to have a number, but that there is the way it is for this campaign. And finally, Bezier Games is going to deliver this expansion for Castles of Mad King Ludwig in November of 2023. Next up, we have an interesting game called A Wayfarer's Tale, which was originally developed to be a physical game. But somewhere along the line, they decided not to go that route. So they've made it a print and play, and there is a second pledge level that's a little more elaborate of a print and play. And so you can print out things to kind of create standees and some physical terrain. But they're not doing a full physical version of this game. You're either going to get a print and play, or you're going to get a kind of next level print and play. And the art, we'll get there, but the art is by Tristan Rossin, and his art is really cool. So this is something that I really wanted to include in this video, even though there is no physical copy of the game, and I usually don't include print and plays. But in this case, I'm making an exception because this one is on a very high level. Now, because it is just a print and play, they had a minimum required funding goal of $1,200. They're currently at $15,000, which is about 12 times that minimum required funding goal. A Wayfarer's Tale is going to complete its campaign on Wednesday, November the 30th. This is a game for 1 to 4 players that plays in about 15 to 45 minutes. Complexity on the game is light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium-low. Mainly because it's a print and play, there's not too much that can go wrong, so we're kind of giving them an extra upgrade on the risk. There's less risk involved because they're not shipping you a physical product. This is just something that you're going to print out on your own. Mechanically, it largely functions around dice rolling, and it's a roll and write. So you're going to be rolling your dice, moving around a map, fighting some monsters, getting resources, and it's a print and play. It's designed by James Emerson, who previously designed a game called Tranquility, and it has art from Tristan Rossin, who's worked on Brick and Mortar, Cosmic Colonies, and Tranquility. And the publisher here, Bright Light Games, previously put out a game called the Mariana Trench. Now, there are 2 different pledge levels. For $7, you can pledge Wayfarers. That's going to give you the sort of simplified print and play version. And for $10, you can pledge Treasure Seeker. That's going to give you an additional map. There are 4 maps in the first pledge level. This one will give you 5. Plus, it will give you extra files so that you can print out and make your own standees, as well as some physical terrain with Tristan Rossin's art that you'll be able to kind of construct out of paper, and you'll have, little paper constructed terrain around your print and play. There is no shipping on this one, and this isn't because they're being vague. This is because they're just going to give you files and you're going to print it out at home. And so that delivery, the files being sent to you, that's going to happen in December of 2022, this year, very soon, because they'll be doing that as soon as the campaign is over. They won't need to wait to send out physical product like almost every other game. Next on the list is a game called Copan Dying City. This one had a minimum required funding goal of $21,000. They're currently at $54,000, which is about 2.5 times that minimum required funding goal. This one's going to complete its funding on Thursday, December 1st. It's a game for 1 to 4 players that plays in 60 to 180 minutes. This is a heavy game, heavy complexity, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium-high. Now, this is a worker placement game where there is a dying civilization, so you're going to be doing things with resources, and in the early part of the game, the resources are plentiful. But as the game goes on, the civilization is literally going to be falling apart and dying. There'll be random event cards that kind of come out and affect the decline of the civilization in different ways. And as that happens, the resources will no longer become plentiful. And so the game will get tighter and tighter and crunchier as it gets further along. I think it's a pretty cool idea for a game. And I don't always like games that get tighter at the end where, if you haven't planned really far ahead, things could just run right off the tracks. But considering the theme of this game and how it's geared for that, I think I'm fascinated by this one, and I really would like to play it. Now, it's designed by Eric Dubois and Olivier Mellison. They have worked on all of their games together. That includes Dominations, Road to Civilization, Museum, and Museum Pictura. The artist is Ronan Towle-Hout, who's worked on The Court of Miracles and Encyclopedia. And the publisher, Holy Grail Games, has put out Dominations, Road to Civilization, Museum, and Rallyman GT. Now, the first pledge level in this campaign is kind of interesting. It's $47. It's called the Acolyte Pledge, and it's only going to get you the add-ons. The reason here is there is some additional stuff, as most campaigns go. Once you get into the higher pledge levels, there are all these cosmetic add-ons and things that make your game just feel much better, kind of blinged out. But they are planning on in the future to produce different language versions of the game. However, when those go to retail, they won't have all of these extras. So what they're doing is they're offering this pledge level for people who want one of those other language versions that's not currently available. So they'll send you all of these extras, and then you will need to buy the game at retail. So for $47, you'll just be getting all of the add-ons. And if you want to know what those are, just hang in there. We'll get to those in just a second. For $63, or the Obsidian pledge, you'll get the base game and the Aztec Ambassadors promo cards. And then for $99, you can pledge the Jade pledge. That's going to get you the base game, the promo cards, and it's going to add in a few things. The Lost Valley expansion, which is going to include a sort of narrative booklet, which will give you sort of a campaign that you can play. And there'll be some additional components in there as well, some cards, some tiles, some things. But this booklet will allow you to play the game with kind of a narrative story behind the decline. You'll also get the deluxe token set, which is going to feature 139 silkscreen wooden tokens, upgrades from the base game, as well as a card sleeve set. Now, if you want some of those things, but not all of them, you can get the middle pledge and then add on the things that you do want. $21 will get you the Lost Valley expansion, $16 will get you the deluxe token set, and $10 will get you the card sleeve set. Now notice that when you add up those three add-ons, it's $47. And that is the pledge of the Alkalite pledge, because those are the things that you would be getting if you just pledge the Alkalite pledge. So you get those three add-ons, the deluxe tokens, the card sleeves, and that expansion that allows you to do kind of like a narrative campaign-y version. And then you would then need to go and find the game at retail when it eventually is made and ships to your area in your language. Now, a lot of the stuff in the game, it's kind of all iconography driven, so you don't necessarily need the language stuff, but you might want like the instruction booklets in your language. And I'm assuming that when they do ship that game to retail, the instructions for the Lost Valley expansion will also be included in that retail version, because you will want it to be language specific. Now in the continental US, shipping has been estimated at $10, $17, and $17. So $10 if you're just getting that add-on pledge, $17 if you're getting the game with the promo cards, and $17 if you're getting the game with the promo cards and all of the extras. And finally, Holy Grail Games is planning on delivering Copan Dying City in September of 2023. From there, we go to Werewolf, the Apocalypse, Retaliation. This one had a minimum required funding goal of $149,000, so fairly high funding goal. They're currently at $585,000, which is about 4 times that minimum required funding goal. This one is also going to complete its funding on Thursday, December the 1st. It is a game for 1 to 4 players that plays in about 30 to 60 minutes. The complexity on the game is medium heavy, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium high. Now, it's a cooperative game, and on their Kickstarter page, they describe it as a dungeon crawler, but it's not actually listed as a dungeon crawler on Board Game Geek. So it's going to be dungeon crawler-ish, but it may not be a flat-out dungeon crawler, but it is a cooperative game, and it is campaign-y. There's branching scenarios in it, and it's going to be very similar to a game that the same team did a couple years ago called Vampire the Masquerade Chapters, although that one very much followed a story. It was very focused on a narrative story. This one's still going to have a branching storyline in this campaign, so it will have a story to it, but the primary focus, I think, in Vampire the Masquerade was following this narrative story. This one's going to be a little bit more focused on strategy and tactics, although it will still have a story. It's co-designed by Thomas Filippi and Gary Petra, and they have previously together worked on Kaiwedin, Until Daylight, and Vampire the Masquerade Chapters. The art is from Marie-Michelle Ayotte, and the game is being published by Flyos Games. Now for $112, you can pledge Hamed. That is the base game with any unlocked stretch goals. For $199, you can pledge Lupus, and that is going to add in the Aftermath expansion. And I'll talk about this in just a minute, But the Aftermath expansion is actually 4 different expansions. Each one has 3 scenarios, some additional miniatures, additional cards, and things like that. But if you pledge this level, you're getting all 4 of them together. For $298, you can pledge the Krenos level, and that's going to give you, I think, 5 more things that are kind of quality of play upgrades. So you're going to get a metal dice set, a metal trophy set, a painted miniatures set, a set of these 11 faux leather bags that you can keep your different dice sets in, and terrain miniatures. And if you want some but not all of those things, you can pledge at a lower level and then add on the things that you do want. So as I mentioned, they're actually going to break up that expansion, the Aftermath expansion, into 4 different add-ons. So each of them is $29, and each of them is going to be comprised of 3 scenarios, some miniatures, some additional components. So the value there is, if you were to get all 4 of those expansions as add-ons, it would be $116. But if you just increase your pledge from the first level to the second level that includes all 4 of them, that is an $89 increase. So you're saving, I think, $30 on that. For $39, you can add on those metal dice. For $29, you can add on the metal trophies, and those are metal coins, essentially. For $36, you can add on the 11 little dice satchels that are made of faux leather. For $52, you can add on the terrain miniatures, and for $44, you can add on the painted character miniatures. In the continental US, the shipping has been estimated at $24, $28, and $37, so each of one of those corresponds with the ascending pledge levels. And they're also adding on a 7% tax. They're calling it a VAT tax. It's not really a VAT tax coming to the state, but it will be a tax that they'll be adding on to it. And I believe, I'm not 100%, but I believe that that tax is applied to the pre-shipping amount that you're pledging. Finally, Flyhouse Games is planning on delivering this one in March of 2024, so this is a little further out than most of the other campaigns that we're talking about. It won't be delivered for at least a year and a half, year and a quarter, somewhere around in there. From there, we go to The Last of Us Escape the Dark. This one had a minimum required funding goal of $145,000. They're currently at $800,000, which is the biggest, richest campaign of the video of the week. That also gives them a multiplier of 5.5 times that minimum required funding goal. Now, The Last of Us is going to complete its funding on Friday, December the 2nd. This is a game for 1 to 5 players that plays in about 60 to 120 minutes. Complexity on the game is medium light, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium high. So this is a cooperative game. It's got black and white art. There's been a few versions of this that have come out before, well, 2, Escape the Dark Castle and Escape the Dark Sector. And evidently the people who made the video games The Last of Us liked those games so much that they allowed them to make a new version of this game with The Last of Us, the famous video game, as the theme. So you're going to have new puzzles, new artwork, everything new, but it's going to follow the same formula as Escape the Dark Castle and Escape the Dark Sector. Usually what that means with these games is you're going to be doing a lot of dice rolling, there's card play, and you're going to be following some kind of a story through in chapters. And so every chapter you're going to be dealing with little mini challenges that you'll be trying to meet through the card play and the dice rolling. It's co-designed by Alex Crispin, Thomas Pike, and James Shelton. It's also got Alex Crispin handling the art, and their company is called Themeborn, and all of those entities, the 3 designers, the artist, and the publisher, their previous credits include Escape the Dark Castle and Escape the Dark Sector. So they've just been kind of working on that project, that series of projects together throughout their board game career so far. And they've landed now on an escape version of The Last of Us. For $79, you can pledge the standard version of the game, and for $120, you can pledge the collector's edition. Now, the collector's edition is going to add in a slipcase for the game, character miniatures, and dual layered player boards. You can also pledge at the $158 pledge level, which is the all-in bundle. That's going to add in a playmat, a large set of card sleeves, and 3 small sets of card sleeves. If you'd prefer not to get one or the other of the playmat or the sleeves, you can handle whichever things you want through the add-ons. The playmat is $30 as an add-on. The large sleeve pack is $6 and a small sleeve pack is $4. And remember, you're gonna want 3 of those small sleeve packs, so it'll end up costing you $12. Depending on which of those 3 pledge levels you're pledging at, your shipping in the continental US has been estimated at $21, $24, and $28. And Themeborn is planning on delivering The Last of Us Escape the Dark in December of 2023. The last campaign on our list takes us over to Gamefound for the first and only time. This is for the Mysthea and Icaion solo expansions. They had a minimum required funding goal for this campaign of $1. So it makes their multiplier a little bit crazy. They're currently sitting at $35,000, which means they have a 35,000 multiplier. I think it's a little easier for them to put out these smaller solo expansions. It's not as big a deal, but I also think they probably do need more than $1 to make that happen. So that number may be a little bit questionable, but I also think there was no way that they weren't going to get the funding to make this happen, because I don't think they need a huge amount of money to produce these smaller solo expansions. This is also going to complete its funding on Friday, December the 2nd, and these are solo expansions, so we're looking at a 1-player count. But the base games, for the 2 games that we're talking about, the base games play 2 to 5 players in 90 to 120 minutes. Now, Icaion has a medium-heavy complexity, Mysthea has a heavy complexity, and we're going to set the risk associated with this campaign at medium-low. Icaion is an engine building and resource management game. Mysthea is more about hand management and area control, but both games have deck building in common, so we're going to focus on deck building as the primary mechanic here. These 2 new solo expansions are co-designed by John Albertson and David Turksey. David Turksey is best known for Anachrony, Imperium Classics, Imperium Legends, Kitchen Rush, and Tekenyu Obelisk of the Sun. And art duties are being shared by Travis Anderson, who has worked on all of their games before, so he's worked on Icaion, Mysthea, and Volfirion. And he's joined by Andrea Butera, who's worked on Legends of Novus, Sons of Forelli, and Volfirion Guilds. The game is being published by Tabula Games, who've previously put out Barbarians the Invasion, Icaion, and Mysthea. Now for $12, you can pledge the Icaion solo pledge, so that's just going to get you the stuff that you need to play Icaion solo. You can also separately pledge $12 for the Mysthea solo pledge, and that will get you just the stuff you need for Mysthea. However, you can bundle them together. It's $23 to get the Icaion and Mysthea solo pledge. For $78, you can get the Icaion Essential Edition, so that will get you the blinged out base game for Icaion. And also for $78, you can get the Mysthea Essential Edition, which will give you the blinged out version of Mysthea. Now for $156, you can get the pledge level that bundles those 2 games together. So you'll get the Icaion and Mysthea Essential Edition bundle, and then they will throw into that bundle a game called Mysthea the Fall, which allows you to take the components from both games, combine them, and play a new game that uses kind of both games combined, or parts of both games combined. Now there's an interesting thing here where a lot of the pledge levels are adding on, so you can pledge, the solo stuff that you want, and then you can choose another pledge level and say add to pledge. So they don't actually have a big bundle that includes everything and the solo editions all put together, but you can kind of choose the various things you want. If you want certain game and a certain solo mode, or the bundle with both base games, Mysthea of the Fall, you can do that as a pledge and add that on to your bundle with both solo expansions. So you kind of be pledging for multiple pledge levels at the same time. Now there are also a few add-ons. For $21, you can add on the Volfirion Dragon Miniature. That was something that they did as kind of an extra for their smaller card game Volfirion, but it is also able to be used in their bigger games. For $4, you can add on the solo expansion playmat. Finally, for $10, you can add on the Mysthea English deck. What that means, this game is largely designed around iconography, and so if, for whatever reason, if you don't like dealing with all that iconography, this will give you cards that actually have things written on them, so it may be a little more clear for you. Now their shipping is a little bit wonky because you may be pledging multiple shipping levels at the same time. But they're giving, in the continental US, shipping estimates of $8, $31, and $46. So if you get one solo expansion, you're looking at $8 in estimated shipping. If you're getting a big essential edition, you're looking at $31. And if you're getting the sort of combined, both games plus Mysthea the Fall, you're looking at $46. I have a feeling if you were to add on other things, like if you get that big bundle and then, a couple solo decks, you may go up a little past $46. Finally, Tabula Games is planning on delivering Mysthea and Icaion solo expansions in November of 2023. Okay, so last week I talked about 3 different games. I really thought about pledging Tabriz, but I just have too many games in my collection. I'm needing to get rid of some games, so I need to be a little more careful about which things that I pledge. However, I could not pass up Unconscious Mind. I'm a huge fan of Johnny Pack, who is the developer and one of the designers on the game, and I just recently got Endless Winter Paleo-Americans from Fantasia Games, which I'm super excited about. I like the theme of Unconscious Mind as well, the Freud theme, the psychology theme, curing patients, and the components, everything about it looks good. The card art looks amazing, and I know this is going to be a big, crunchy, heavy Euro that is right up my alley. I have a feeling if I was pledging a very small number of games for next year, like say a dozen games, only a dozen games, Unconscious Mind would still make that cut. It is definitely on a short list of games that I am incredibly excited about for next year. So that was the one game that I pledged from last week. This week, I'm currently pledging one game. You can theorize about what that might be. Guess in the comments if you like. There are several other games this week that I really kind of would like to pledge as well, so I may end up pledging more than just that one. But come back next week and you'll find out how many games I pledged and which games they were. I'm a little worried about my decision process because there's a few games I think look really, really cool and I'd like to not miss them, but I'm trying to pledge less things and kind of whittle down my selection. Now, I acquired 3 new games in my collection this period. The first is Dune Imperium Immortality. It is the, I think, second expansion for Dune Imperium. I got the original game, which I think is great. It's a combination of deck building and worker placement. It is sort of a points race. There's an arena element at the end of every round where you're fighting other players. And then they did an expansion with miniatures to replace some of the cubes in the game. There were also some additional mechanics in that version as well. I don't think I've actually played yet with that first expansion. But I love it so much that I knew I was going to want the second expansion. I think it's the second expansion, which is Immortality. So I went ahead and pre-ordered that. It came to me from Dire Wolf. It's a smaller expansion. It wasn't terrible. It's, the box is like this big, and I believe that all the components will fit in with the bigger box, the collector's box that I have from pledging that before. So I think I've got everything right now for Dune Imperium. It's a great game. I know all of the original stuff will make it an even better game, and I think they could stop now. I think I'm okay if they stop now. But there are more movies coming, over the next few years. So who knows? If the IP stays fresh, they may continue to add on to it. And Dire Wolf is the same company, some of the same designers who work on the Clank series, and that is another just amazing game, amazing series, and I think everything they add to that game and that IP is welcome. So if they add more stuff to Dune Imperium, I'm down for it. I trust the designers and the publisher with this one. I also got my package for The King's Dilemma. So The Queen's Dilemma is something I pledged a couple of weeks ago. It is a sequel game to The King's Dilemma. I've never played The King's Dilemma, and they were doing a bundle deal at the publisher's website, so I went ahead and I ordered that. That has come in, and hopefully I'll be able to pull a few different friends together. We'll play that campaign together. It is sort of a voting game, negotiations, where you are council advisors. You're trying to determine how to run a country, what choices are made, and it's a legacy game. It doesn't have too much going on, I don't think, component-wise, but it's a lot of kind of table talk and decision making in a legacy package. So hopefully we'll really enjoy the King's Dilemma, and then when the Queen's Dilemma shows up in a year or so, we'll be hotly anticipating it. And the final thing that I received this period is Tapestry, Plans, and Ploys. I mentioned I've been playing it lately, and I'm ready for more stuff. The game needs some help, it needs some balancing, and hopefully this newest expansion will help it along that way. But I like Tapestry a lot. I'm now rating it a 7.5, and we'll see. We'll see if this makes the game even better. Hopefully it does, because I like the game and I want to like it even more. That wraps the video for this week. Thank you very much for joining me. Hopefully I talked about some campaigns that piqued or tweaked your interest. Let me know. Let me know in the comments if there's anything that you are happy to discover. And also let me know if there are any games that I talked about in those last two sections, the new arrivals and the game that I pledged from the last video, Unconscious Mind, if any of those things that are specifically hold appeal for you and are games that you'd like me to produce more content for in the future, in the beginning of next year, in terms of teach and review videos, because I'm going to be going pretty soon. I'm going to be pumping out some teach and reviews, and I want to make sure that if there are people out there who are watching and enjoying my videos, that I'm producing content and featuring games that are specifically what you want. I want to kind of find that middle ground where we can all be happy together. I can make some really good videos, and there'll be videos that are specifically what you're looking for. So let me know. Again, if you haven't yet liked and subscribed and you're enjoying this content, please go ahead and do that. It's the best way to support this endeavor and help push me forward to the next level. And I will be back next week. I think for December, we're going to see some shorter videos because there are not a lot of campaigns that are going to be coming out. We're gearing into the holidays. There are going to be less crowdfunding campaigns. These videos will be a little bit shorter. It's not a bad thing. And that'll also give me more time to get that studio finished and kind of move forward on the teach and review videos, and then get the Twitch channel up and running. So all good things in the future. Until I see you next, play some great games. Hopefully I'll get the chance to as well. I do have a friend who's visiting for Thanksgiving. I'm planning to get together with him in a couple days. I think we might take a look at Perseverance Castaway Chronicles, which is a game I've really been wanting to play. So I'm hoping to get both of the games in that package played this week, and I will report back next week about my experiences with those games, as well as the campaigns that are completing their funding next week. I think right now I have maybe 3 for next week's video. So have a great week, play some great games, and I'll talk to you very soon. Take care.